Call the meeting to order. Dr. Deegan, the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Felter? Here. Ms. Nywer?
Here.
Dr. Bridges?
Here.
Mr. Jester?
Here.
Did you forget somebody?
No. Ms. Edwards? Here. Colonel Curtis? Here. They're in order. A different.
Okay. No special guests tonight?
No special guests tonight.
All right. Departmental reports.
Departmental reports, if the board doesn't have any questions over the printed reports, we'll move on to the next item. Okay.
Any questions? Okay.
All right. Report of the superintendent. Item 6A is an information item, and before the board, we have the district accreditation status. Each year we've been sharing, we receive that, and want to make sure the board didn't have any questions. As you can see, we did have one item on there. Let me pull up the right file here. That was a listed as a deficiency at Hugh Bish. And I just wanted everybody to know that we are, as everybody knows, there's a teacher shortage, and we're operating on a lot of emergency certified teachers. This is actually a success story. At the time that the accreditation status had to be finished, the teacher still lacked a credit. But since then, the teacher has completed all of her tests, everything else, and actually due to a shift is actually teaching in another building in our district. And so I think that is a success story. But unfortunately, at the time of the accreditation status, she did not have her credit. But she is teaching elementary school at Adams right now and doing a great job.
And that was the only deficiency.
That was the only deficiency.
What does the focus mean, where it says site designation focus? We've got that on too.
Yep. We have. Let me go through them. Try to get all of them. I'll make sure I'm in order here. Business. We have. I'm going to go by, in order on my list, if that is. Freedom Elementary is designated as a high performance because it was because of their A status. Almore West Elementary was designated high progress due to its growth in overall scores, and I have my understanding from Dr. Polk has a lot to do with their special ed, how they're analyzing and disaggregating their special education data. Actually, we're using Almore West as the model for the rest of the district right now. Ridgecrest is a designation focus, and it was because specifically of its special ed subgroup, not reading the statewide percentage for the same subgroup. So
the focus means that they have something to
yes, with that one specific group of students. So only the special ed subgroup.
Okay.
Central Middle School, again, was the special ed subgroup, same situation. Eisenhower High School and Lawton High had two different reasons, however. Eisenhower High School says eligible for a focus designation because the graduation percentage for Hispanic students was less than the statewide graduation rate for 2015. And then Lawton High, focus designation because the graduation percentage for African American students was less than the national percentage. So again, each school that received a focus designation, and that's the way the state makes sure that we pay attention to what we need to pay attention to, but each school that received a focus designation, it was for one specific subgroup of students.
Okay.
That doesn't make it any less important, no. But I know Dr. Polk and her team are already 30 steps ahead of us on that. So,
okay.
Any other questions about the accreditation report? And there's no action on that, I don't believe, but I want to make sure we present it to the board. The only way we get better is if we're completely open about where we are. If there's no questions on item B or item 6A, I'll move on to item B, and it's consideration and action regarding established priorities and categories for an upcoming bond election. I'm going to try to do this right, Zelda. Perfect. Prepared a little PowerPoint to kind of, because the board's been immersed in this, our staff's been immersed in this. I think I eat, sleep, and drink this at the moment. But we forget sometimes that the public forgets this has been a long process. It began, really discussion about a bond began about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, when we had an assembly, because it was just a difficult process to even talk about the fact that we had an Eisenhower Middle School that was having severe problems. And so we had an assembly, and that began the discussion, and since then, we've done a lot of work, and we have not been hasty. The bond process to date, we've done site, faculties, and parents have all provided input. We've had site meetings, community meetings, and online polls. I think we've done at least 2 online polls. And then to make sure that we were hearing correctly, we actually hired, very economically I might add, an outside consultant, came in to do the same thing again. Online meetings, parent meetings, civic groups, civic clubs, met with pastors. And I want everything that has come from that process has been generated from those sources. This has not been the board's idea. This has not been my staff's idea up here. It has been from the sites, from the parents, from the sites, and from those community meetings. Give an idea, 892 people at least, and that's at least, participated in the polls and the community meetings. And to give people an idea, if you've ever read a presidential poll or an opinion poll on a national level, sometimes they'll have as few as 500 or 600 people that they'll make national trends on. So in a community the size of 100,000, 892 people is a very good number. That's a pretty high saturation rate. Included all these different clubs. They were online surveys, included people from Fort Sill, included parents, guardians, students. We actually had times where we had students go to the lab and fill out the polls. Multiple staff meetings. As a matter of fact, I think the staff may be tired of seeing us. And multiple board meetings in addition to individual meetings between myself and board members on separate issues dealing with this. So that's how I think it's important everybody to remember that we've not only gone around the block with this, but we've gone around 2 or 3 times to make sure we got it right. A hearing from people, everybody possibly that we can, on what's important to the community, what are our needs, and what do we need to invest in as a district. Some basics, some people, these questions always come up. How does a bond work for a school district? It is funded through the property taxes on homes and businesses, and at this point, any proposal that we present would be a tax increase. The board, what I'm preparing for, with the board's blessing, would be a November 14th election, which means we need to get it on the ballot and have a proposal approved next week, by the end of the week, by the 14th. You have to do it 60 days before the election. Bond money can only be used for construction, physical improvements, and equipment. That's kind of a rough, you can buy stuff with it or build things. That's pretty much all you can use bond money for. And the bond money cannot be used for salaries, travel, or training. I've had a lot of good people say, well, I would do a bond if we could raise teachers. We can do a sales tax with that, if anybody's out is listening. We could do a sales tax, but we cannot do a bond to pay teachers' salaries. And one of the facts about bonds that a lot of people need to remember is bond proposals do require a supermajority. So a lot of people have to believe in it, and a lot of people have to show up and support it if it is to happen. The progress since 2014, as a district and as a board, we've increased supplies, technology, we've increased support, extra duty and certified pay, and 3 different, or actually more than that, efforts. We've finally solved the textbook and resource funding problem. We've got that in place. We've revitalized our bus fleet, and we're not only keeping the bond and sales tax promises from 2014, we are all of the major projects left over from 2004, and that's 13 years ago, are either commissioned or approved at the moment. By commissioned, I mean they are with the architect, getting drawn up for approval by the board. We have a bond oversight committee that's been active and engaged, and they've met at every twice a year, just as planned from the beginning. We've restored site budgets to the principals, and we've restored our salary steps, which every year our staff gets their guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but their expected salary steps, which is a small wage increase on top of the other raises. And I think it's important for people to realize that any discussion that the board has happened would focus on new areas and projects We're not talking about buying textbooks again. That is taken care of. We're not talking about buying teacher laptops. We're not talking about things that we've already done. This is about going to the next level. And that's what we heard from the community. Here's some examples of the sales tax process. If it has an asterisk next to it, an asterisk, I mispronounce it all the time, those are actually projects that we've had to catch up on over the last few years. Those are from the 2004 bond. Those were projects identified. Like Whittier HVAC, the MacArthur Middle School roof, the MacArthur Middle School HVAC, Lawton High roof. Those are projects that we've been able to catch up with, and one of the issues that the district has run into is deferred maintenance. And that's when the district in the past has chosen to put off maintenance projects. And I'm not arguing with the logic, because we do have to favor the classroom and our staff. But in some cases, when you have a building, for example, I'm going to use Carriage Hills as an example, that roof can't start fast enough. Right, Ms. Clodfelter? She wants it on tomorrow, or yesterday, actually. But when you have a roof that's been leaking for 13 years or more, then once you get the roof on, then you got to deal with all the other issues. That happened, that's actually on MacArthur Middle School, if everybody remembers that roof. The lava rock roof, I think, was just beautiful. But what happened, it had been leaking for so long, we had to make a decision. Do we put a roof on first, or do we do the HVAC? Well, you don't want to put HVAC on the middle of a building that's going to be flooding and it's just going to get further degraded. And so anytime water is coming in a roof, it's a huge issue. But as a district, historically, maybe have put off some of these decisions, and I'm not second guessing, I'm just saying that the lasting impact is a huge issue. So this deferred maintenance has cost us some expenses now that hopefully we can get ahead of. But I do believe that as a district, we've done a tremendous amount, and it only could have happened with the board, our maintenance staff, and everybody identifying the right projects. In addition to this, there are some sales tax projects that are listed up there. Lawton High School windows are about ready to be bid. The MacArthur High School windows, if everybody remembers what happened with Eisenhower High School, we've got a lot of issues that are just about to pop in the very near future, and I think that's a good thing for the district. So we're catching up. We're catching up basically all the major projects from 2004, and at this point, we have kept our promise on all the 2014 projects as well. Everything on the sales tax as well is online to go. So the board has not only kept its promises for the current bond, but also caught up from previous bonds when board members weren't on there. Here's the current status of our bond process. We have chosen a financial advisor. We've tentatively, in individual discussions, and identified an election date. And as a matter of fact, we had a board meeting a week ago where we discussed that. We've chosen an architect. We've assessed possible impact to the taxpayers. And hopefully tonight we'll determine, finalize the areas of the bond based on the feedback from the site's community, parents, staff, and students. And so we're really at the final stages of refining proposal. I know in the last week or two I've met with ag teachers, I've heard from band teachers and music teachers, I've heard from just about everybody in the district over the last 6 weeks, both before and after school started. Here's some factors that I think the district needs to consider. There's not anybody I've met that believes that Eisenhower Middle School is worth restoring. The building, we've been monitoring, the staff there has been measuring the cracks and things like that. But despite that, even though everything has been staying within the architect's tolerance level, in the last, I think it's been 6 months, we had to shut down a complete bank of restrooms. So now the building is operating on one fewer group of restrooms, an entire floor's worth of restrooms, due to the best we know is the ground has shifted and the pipes have just collapsed. Impossible to get to without a major investment. And we do have to be forthcoming. Without a new Eisenhower Middle School, if we don't rebuild that building, then we would have to consider going down to 3 middle schools for the district, which we do believe is doable. But in the last few months, we realized with the numbers in our lower grades, and actually pretty big increases our middle schools, it's not as easy as we thought it would once be. Our numbers are definitely support 4 middle schools right now, and so that's a critical issue. Again, deferred maintenance is a huge problem, and but whatever we do, I want to really commend the board, because everything we've done has been based on staff, parent, and community and student input. These are not ideas that the board generated. They came organically from our staff and community. Whatever we do, we've been very sensitive to what neighboring districts have as far as bonding capacities. Elgin, and I got these information directly from the superintendents of both districts today, just to confirm. Elgin will be actually over 33 mills based on their projection, and Cache is currently at 27 mills. And so what we are, so whatever the board is considering, they've already considered where do we fit within our community average. And although Cache and Elgin and Lawton Public Schools don't compete in that way, we are in the, we do serve the same students in a lot of ways. So,
Dr. Deegan, I hate to interrupt, but we kind of skipped over the number 3 about
Oh, we did, didn't we?
shelters. I feel like that's really important.
it is. I just get to yakking, and sometimes I lose track. My staff's kind of used to it. One of the things we discovered, and it turned out that, and it kind of surprised us, it's a big concern among the community, is storm shelters. We had a team of architects. They do this for school districts. They came through, an entire team of architects, and came through and assessed every single one of our buildings in the district. They were on site in the building. Mr. Smith and Mr. Ledford led them through. And what they did, identified our buildings, which buildings had the greatest need of storm shelters and which ones actually had plenty of storm shelters. So they identified them in groups of 1, 2, and 3 levels of priority. And the most serious sites right now have little or no adequate storm shelter. And so we are in Oklahoma, and in recent years, it has just become critical with the Moore tornado and everything else that's something the districts start addressing. We are not going to get safe rooms in all of our buildings overnight, but we do believe we have a responsibility to put forth a plan that addresses safe rooms in those buildings that have the least amount of protection right now. We have a lot of open concept schools, et cetera, that just don't have a place for students to go that's underground or entirely safe. Any questions over that page?
We go back to the deferred maintenance.
Yes.
So all of these will be caught up.
They are being addressed
Okay.
and will be caught up. They're either at the architect or are ready for bid.
So we will have no major deferred maintenance after these are all caught up.
Yes. We will have nothing that's left over from 13 years ago. Now we just have the new ones that need to be done. For example, this roof. We at some point we need to do the roof in this building. Even my staff need a roof that doesn't leak.
It's not a very big building, so somebody will just throw this one in.
It's not a big building. But, we've been very sensitive that we're not going to replace this roof until we get all the roofs in the other buildings fixed. That's just not where the priority of our staff is. But, again, I think it's impressive. You count up there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects that were left over from 2004 the board has completed or will have completed in just a few short years.
You were talking about how much Elgin in mills and how much Cache in mills. You wanted to let everybody know how much we have in mills right now?
Oh, our current millage right now, last year was 8, this year is 9. It's projected to be in the 7s next year. I believe so. So we're at 1/3. To put that in perspective, Lawton Public Schools locally invests about 1/3 of what our neighboring school districts do in their schools.
That's embarrassing.
And so if we're even at 9, which would be the high, and Cache is at 27, that's 3 times as much. And Elgin being at 33, I'm an English teacher, but that's a little more than 3 times as much.
So are they abnormally high, or are we just abnormally low
State
compared to
average
the
is
state?
27.
If you look at districts our size, traditionally, all of them on our size that we compared, and I think Dr. Pierce actually had it in her presentation, was 27 was a good margin or a good area for districts our size. I think Norman, Midwest City, Del City, all of them were 24 or above last time I checked.
We're abnormally low.
Okay.
Yeah, we're kind of
We're
abnormal.
asking. We're embarrassingly low.
And have been for decades.
Yeah.
And so when, for example, the amount that we get for our building fund, can basically take care of emergency repairs, those sorts of things. The only way a school district, matter of fact, it was on the week I was hired in 2013, even the Daily Oklahoman, which is not a big supporter of taxes, had an editorial the week I was hired here in 2013, which says the only way a school district can get ahead on its maintenance and its building is through a bond program. And the program that we've established is 4 years ago, little less than 4 years, 3 years ago, we asked the community for a very small bond, renewal. And our plan for the last 3 years has been, we're going to follow what we said. We're going to have a group of men and women from the community oversee that in addition to the board. And we're going to keep our promises and try to earn the community's trust so we can take our district to the next level. At this point, I can say that the board has done that. And I do believe we have, we've done what we said we would do. We've kept our promises. And really, this is about whether or not, as I said up there, whether or not our students deserve the extras that other districts get. I got to go to, and it's not just about our students either. I got to go to some trainings on Friday, and to see our staff having, we have teachers that have taught 3, 4, 5 years, have never had their materials to teach, and to see them being trained in their new textbooks. And you know, as a district, it's probably not good policy for me to share that publicly, because it's kind of an embarrassing thing. I've been here, I've been here 4 years. It took me 4 years to get my head around it, and it took us 4 years as a board to address it. That's not a feather in anybody's cap. But to see our staff working with materials, and for new teachers, the stress just to melt off their faces to realize I actually have the right materials to teach. And then you put on top of that, and Dr. Polk and I were looking at our test scores earlier, pretty much across the board, we've stayed competitive. I could name some big districts that we actually beat. We've stayed competitive, and our teachers have maintained a high level of academic excellence despite the district failing to give them what they need to teach. And so I'm proud to say that we've made that milestone, but I'm also a little embarrassed that we're made that milestone. But to see our teachers' faces the other day was incredible. I wish I had brought board members. It was great.
I work with the chamber quite a bit, and I can tell you that big companies that come here, like Northrop Grumman, Goodyear, the hospitals that are trying to recruit docs, they look at a community's bond indebtedness. That is a big factor for them on whether they come to a community and build a plant like a Goodyear. And we've lost some recently because they've looked at our bond indebtedness and said they don't support their schools enough, we're not coming, because they can't convince their executives and their people to come. So we've got to think about that too.
Agreed.
We're hurting the whole Lawton community, not just our kids and our teachers.
That is the truth, absolutely. Lawton, we have great leadership in Lawton Economic Development Corporation now, and they're trying hard to recruit new factories, manufacturing and technology companies, and it is a big factor.
Any other questions up to this point?
Is EMS safe right now for the kids?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one thing the architects they came up with a plan. The staff measure all of the critical points to see if there's been much movement. And I get a report on that periodically, and then our architect oversees it, and he advises us, yes, it's still within safe tolerances.
But it's not going to last forever.
It's safe, but it'll be a nice.
Yeah.
So
Right.
We're
it's
not
like we're
putting
not
any money
repairing their bathrooms.
It needs heating there, and our roof's leaking
Right.
pretty badly, so it's not a comfortable environment.
The comparison, the last comparison we had when we had companies to come look at it, we thought repairing the existing structure would be 25 to 30 million, and rebuilding it was going to be about 30 million. And so that's one of the,
No-brainer.
it'd be throwing bad money after good, or good money after bad, however that
And we
works.
repaired it once, and it didn't stay that way.
I understand in the mid-90s that the district, if you go in the basement, you can see the trusses and
Yeah, I
everything
was on the
else.
board then. My daughter spent most of her time at Eisenhower in a portable because they were trying to repair the building.
It's the only building I've been into where you can drop a pencil and it will roll outside.
Oh, it will. Through the crack.
And I'm not kidding.
You can literally.
I think we've covered those holes since then, but I have seen spots where a pencil could roll outside. Any other questions from the board or comments, thoughts? The board's been involved in this process. So that's where it leads us to this. Here's the tentative November 2017 bond categories and priorities, and that's really the question for the board today. Before I can move forward with a financial advisor, before I can ask them to prepare the documents, really need the board to determine if this reflects what not only they believe, but what they believe they've heard from the community. About $12 million, approximately $12 million will address safe rooms in our high priority sites. Not only, and it says safe rooms and tornado shelters, but we're thinking safe rooms that way in these buildings. They can also be used as libraries, etc. We're not talking about wasted space. The priority, hands down, without a doubt, even over safe rooms among staff and parents, was instructional technology, supplies, materials, software, and equipment. And we're not talking about textbooks again. That issue is solved. We're buying textbooks again this year, whether with or without the bond. It's not talking about teacher laptops or computers. We're buying those again this year, with or without this bond. Or support staff, which they got their computers last year. This is talking about the fact that we don't really have a funding source to replace LCD projectors on a regular basis until they just basically get so bad you can't use them anymore. Smart boards in every classroom, those sorts of things that in every classroom that will actually use them. Those are things that parents ask for, but the big issue that we ask for are issues like programs that we've neglected as a district. A tuba costs a tremendous amount of money. And as soon as we get, we're hopeful to do another round of band and orchestra equipment, but it's just a drop in the bucket this year. Issues like sports equipment. It costs over $100 to recondition one helmet for a football team. Other districts do support their programs, their ag programs, their music programs, their fine arts programs. We ask all of our programs to do that through fundraising. And I do believe fundraising is important because extracurricular activities are kind of like a market. If you can't support it, it's probably not viable. But our staff has done, and our parents have borne that burden and done a tremendous job. But we, parents want to see us providing equipment for those activities that their students do. And so that's where that came from. We're talking about going to the next level to ensure that the students have the available devices in their hands beyond the teachers. We're asking what they want is to see that we actually, in those classrooms that we'll use and maximize projector equipment, even though we now have an LCD projector in every classroom in the district, minus a couple that probably broke this week. Never 100% because something's always broken. But smart boards, and to go to the next level with what students need. In addition to that, the simple fact that we have teacher desks and chairs that are not, they're safe, but they sure aren't comfortable. We haven't replaced teacher desks, student desks, in some cases in 40 or 50 years. We have to start thinking about those things. The question is, do our students deserve desks that are comfortable and up to date and fit their bodies? When you have students sitting in the wrong size desk or desks that were designed for a learning environment that was 50 years ago, we have to ask if that's appropriate. And the third bullet is really just about $2 million a year to help keep addressing and keep ahead of our deferred maintenance issues that we've put off. And we're catching up on, but this will help ensure that we don't fall behind. And there are also some specific projects that I think the board would like to explore in that. And then finally, approximately $43 million for the rebuilding of Eisenhower Middle School. That comes out to be about $200 per square foot is kind of the estimate. But that is with demolition of the old building included, in addition to we will have to finance this up front for 5 years to get and so a good portion of this bond would be a revenue bond. And the tentative total right now is $98,322,720. And if the board will act on these or modify them or change them or have a discussion on what we need to do with this, I would, my next step.
Can you please include the critical information at the bottom?
Oh, yeah. Critical information, this is important. Please, everybody in Tomlinson Middle School area, this is important. There was a lot of discussion on whether or not we needed to do something with Tomlinson Middle School. Part of the discussion arose from if we don't rebuild Eisenhower Middle School, how do we fit everybody in? Well, Tomlinson Middle School, Central Middle School, and MacArthur Middle School would be our 3 middle schools if we don't rebuild. But if we rebuild Eisenhower Middle School, we still need Tomlinson. That issue is off the table. We have seen increases in our enrollment. Eisenhower Middle School, for example, has about 300 more kids than it did last year. Based on the numbers of our growth in our smaller grades, we have some kids, we have some bubbles coming up that we're going to need 4 middle schools to fill, or 3 much larger middle schools. If we do have to close Eisenhower Middle School, we'll be really cramped in the other 4 middle schools. But at this moment, we don't see any trends, no discussion of Tomlinson Middle School being anything other than Tomlinson Middle School, and no discussion of elementary schools closing or consolidating at this point. By moving our pre-K back into we moved our pre-K classes from beginnings collaboration this year. It has actually filled up our elementary schools. Our middle schools are full. We're not going to sell a couple buildings for a while because we know we may possibly need them again. So right now, our district is probably at a good saturation level of students. Unless something happened that we can't predict, like a huge drop in enrollment, we need Tomlinson Middle School and all the elementary schools we have. I think the district has done as much cutting and consolidating as it should do or can do. So good question, yes. Got to keep me on point.
And it's my understanding now, the Eisenhower Middle School plans call for a little bit of space that we can accommodate that increase that we know is coming.
Yep. It's built on a plan for 1,000 students, which they have about 900 right now. And it's built in such a way that if it did grow in the future, we could add additions to it pretty easily. So, and those were just tentative plans. And Dr. Polk's staff met. And again, the very first people that met on the Eisenhower Middle School plans with the architect were the principal and her staff. Board members didn't, I didn't, Dr. Polk didn't. It was them saying this is what we want our school to look like. Only after they were done with it and we actually had preliminary drawings from the architect did our staff or the board even add any comments. And so when I want people to understand, this has come from the staff. Every aspect of this bond has come from the staff. And every aspect of what's important. And I'm proud of them for all the work. And I'm also proud of them for patience because some of them are so frustrated with us. They think, what in the world are you doing up there? Any other questions? So with the board, here's what we need tonight. Action from the board to establish and confirm that those are the priorities that we want to move forward with. If that happens, then I'll move forward with the financial advisors and tentatively have a special meeting next week. But up in a discussion, I apologize. It took a lot longer to do that presentation than I anticipated. But thank you for the questions.
Anyone have any additional questions or comments?
I'd like to say that we've been looking at this for a long time and had a lot of input from the community and staff, and I think these numbers are what we've identified as what's needed, what this district needs, this community needs to move forward and to go to the next level and do what we need to do. I don't know if we need a motion, but if we do, I move that we accept these tentative numbers and priorities.
I'll second it.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Colonel Curtis?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should not have called on you.
So normally I don't get a vote. I think it's a good idea, but I can't comment on Sill's behalf, but I think it's a good idea. So I support it.
So later in the board meeting, we will have to decide a special meeting, and we'll do that later. But thank you, Zeldin, for getting me all hooked up. Oh. Well, we have good staff.
Last week, but for the last 18 months.
And as I share the good news of the district, there are some announcements. One, I hear from the staff and from our parents, our students deserve what other districts take for granted, and I do agree with them. Some good news. Gridiron, the Lawton Athletic Foundation is having a golf tournament, or they just had one, and they raised $15,000 to be divided among the 3 LPS high schools. They just had one. And they're holding a skeet shoot on September 30th. September 30th for a skeet shoot. If anybody needs 12 gauge, I've got one. You can blow it. FFA students from all 3 Lawton schools are spearheading the Hurricane Harvey relief. So if anybody wants to donate through the schools, that's our FFA. I just met with those teachers the other day and thanked them personally. Let them know we're going to brag on them to the board, but our FFA students are the ones collecting, compiling, and they're trying to figure out how to get it all down there. So we may have some ag trailers headed toward Houston soon. LPS Foundation has 2 opportunities coming up. We have our Texoma Gives, a 1-day campaign for online giving, but also we're having our annual, and it is on September 2nd? 7th, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
We'll be at Lawton Community Theater, all 15 organizations. So come by there and give us your money or just go online.
September 7th at Lawton Community Theater, and the annual breakfast is next Friday, which is the 15th.
That's right.
Starting at 7 a.m. or something like that. 6 a.m.?
6:30. Yeah.
I am terrible with my announcements. Call somebody who knows. And finally, I want to point out, and she didn't want me to, but out in our courtyard there, we have a revitalized flower garden. Thanks 100% to Denise Duffy and Jim Duffy, who donated the flowers, and then Bedrock Nursery donated the labor. And it's beautiful, and Denise is already glaring at me for recognizing her, but she... We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You didn't think she was awesome already. So.
We knew.
That's all I have for my announcements. So.
All right. Does anyone need anything pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to pull 7E1 section on sanctioning.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move for the balance of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Claude Felter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Plain, it's nothing evil.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong. But I do a lot of the reviews for the booster clubs and the PTAs so that they can get sanctioned, and I don't want to vote on them. So take myself out of that.
So we'll vote on those that were pulled separately.
You can vote on
We
that
can vote on
section.
them all the whole.
71 altogether.
Right, yes,
Okay.
71. Mhm.
I make that motion.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Nyworth?
Abstain?
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Claude Felter?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Let's see. Okay, we need an executive session tonight. All right. Do I have a motion?
Move for, go ahead.
I move we go into executive session.
I second.
Call the
Get her
roll,
going
please.
here.
Ms. Claude Felter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Make a
Do we
motion to return
There you
to
go.
executive,
Uh-huh.
from executive session to
Thank you.
open session. Never do that.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
She's getting her voter up there.
Ms. Claude Felter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Education went into executive session at 5:40 p.m. Members present included Dr. Lori Bridges, President, Kent Jester, Vice President, Carla Clodfelter, Patty Nyworth, and Kelly Edwards were present. Other members present included Dr. Tom Deegan, that entered at 6:40. Items discussed included the employing, promoting, and receiving resignations of individual certified and support salaried personnel, so the board can return to open session and vote to take action on personnel transactions as listed on the certified and support personnel reports authorized by 25 Oklahoma Statute Section 307B1, and the employment and performance of superintendent to include discussion of a possible extension of the superintendent's employment contract authorized by 25 Oklahoma Statute Section 307B1 and 7. During the executive session, the board discussed these items and no other items, and no action was taken. The board returned to open session at 7 p.m. This constitutes the minutes of executive session. Okay.
Motion.
Yep,
For
we
the
need a
certified
motion.
and support personnel.
So what are we voting on?
Certified and support personnel.
I'll
Item
move
12A.
for,
Yep, 12A.
Okay. Item 12A is approval of certified and support personnel reports.
move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Item 12B, vote to extend superintendent's employment contract beyond its current ending date of June 30th, 2018.
I'd like to make a motion that we give Dr. Deegan a 2-year extension on his contract to June of 2020.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
I'm sorry, who's second?
Ms.
Oh,
Edwards.
I'm sorry, I didn't see. Ms. Clodfelter?
No.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Is there any new business?
None that I can see.
Next regular board meeting is set for Thursday, September 21st at 5 p.m. here at Shoemaker Center. Do we need to set any additional meeting dates?
We need to, if September 11th at noon works for everybody, I think the finance advisors can have the election proposition and ballot language ready, and that would give them 3 days to get it Monday at noon. Monday, the 11th, September 11th at noon. And then also, if for some reason that doesn't work, I will get a hold of you for a possibility of moving it to either Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
The earlier the better, because the 14th is the deadline.
All right.
So
Is that here?
here.
Okay. Any board announcements?
We don't need a motion or vote on the setting?
Setting a date?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, you just do that, right?
I think so.
We'll just do it.
Yeah.
There's no action written.
Nope.
There's no action to give up.
We've learned.
Okay. Board announcements. Anyone? Mr. Jester?
It's your turn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Call the roll,
That's
please.
his job.
Ms. Clodfelter?
Yes.
Ms. Nyworth?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Edwards?
Yes.
Who's second that?